of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, I thank the government and people of Ethiopia, our gracious host, and commend the African Union Commission for convening us at this critical moment for our continent. Indeed, we meet at a time of profound economic transition. As we speak, global growth is slowing, trade tensions are intensifying, and supply chains are being reorganized. Furthermore, capital has become more expensive, and development assistance that was once a predictable pillar of support is declining. This is exacerbated by a worsening security situation and persistent climate change. We are witnessing a transition to a world economy organized around industrial strategy, geopolitical competition, and control of key resources. In short, the rules of development are changing. For decades, developing countries relied on an external model: export raw materials, import manufactured goods, and finance development through concessional flows. But that model is no longer viable. The implication for Africa is clear. Our development can no longer depend primarily on external conditions. It must increasingly be organized around our own continental economic system. Across the continent, African governments are managing tighter fiscal space, higher borrowing costs, and limited credit ratings. It is not right that today only 3 African economies are investment rated, with 5 approaching investment grade status, while 19 countries have never been rated at all. This state of affairs significantly increases the risk premium African countries pay to finance development. But more than a fiscal challenge, it is also a structural one. When finance is expensive, infrastructure is delayed. And when infrastructure is delayed, production is constrained. And when production is constrained, industrialization stalls. Meanwhile, Africa possesses land, renewable energy potential, critical minerals, and a young labor force. But do we have the economic system that allows those assets to generate value? This is why the African Union's theme of the year, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of the Agenda 2063, is so important. Indeed, water and sanitation are not merely social services, but economic infrastructure. When viewed through an economic lens, access to water becomes a measure of productivity readiness. However, across Africa, more than 300 million people still lack access to safe drinking water, and roughly 780 million lack adequate sanitation. Water-related diseases such as cholera, diarrhea, and typhoid continue to claim lives across the continent, causing approximately 115 preventable deaths every hour in African region, according to World Health Organization. The economic implication is significant. Poor water and sanitation reduce labor productivity, increase health expenditures, and discourage investment. Factories require reliable water supply, agro-processing requires irrigation, and cities require sanitation systems to function productively. In fact, investment decisions, including the location of industries and industrial parks, depend on reliable basic services, including access to water. But without reliable water systems, industrial zones cannot operate competitively, logistics hubs cannot expand efficiently, and urban economies cannot grow sustainably. At the Economic Commission for Africa, we view development as an integrated economic system. Infrastructure, finance, trade, and industrial policy function together. And water sits alongside transport, energy, and digital connectivity as a foundational input into economic production. When production inputs are unreliable, economies cannot manufacture competitively. And when economies cannot manufacture competitively, they remain exporters of raw materials rather than producers of value. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, if Africa is to compete globally, we must move beyond exporting raw commodities. We must process our minerals, transform agriculture, and produce higher value goods. This is the logic of value addition and regional value chains. In this respect, Africa Continental Free Trade Area represents Africa's foremost development platform, enabling production at scale and competitive industries within our continental market. As global trade fragments, regional integration becomes vital. I'm confident that Africa will industrialize because our continental market allows production to be organized internally. But it will require a policy response, which must be deliberate, coordinated, and anchored in our economic priorities. Allow me, Excellencies, to outline 5 priority actions for our collective attention. First, Africa must mobilize and manage development finance more effectively. To this end, we should strengthen domestic resource mobilization, as mentioned by the chairperson, improve public financial management, and enhance credit credibility so that African countries can access capital markets on fairer terms and reduce the cost of infrastructure financing. It is not right that Africa's tax to GDP ratio remains at 16% compared to 34% in EU. Additionally, innovative instruments, including green bonds, blue bonds, and blended finance, should be used to fund productive infrastructure, including water systems that support economic activity. Second, we must invest in integrated productive infrastructure. Water systems should be planned alongside transport corridors, ports, energy networks, and digital infrastructure so that they support industrial parks, logistics hubs, and productive cities rather than operate as an isolated sectoral projects. Third, we must accelerate value addition through regional value chains under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. African resources must increasingly be processed within the continent in agro-processing, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, and green minerals. This will allow our trade to move from raw exports to industrial exports. Fourth, we must deepen continental market integration. This requires full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, including the removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers and the harmonization of standards. With efficient customs systems in place, African firms will be able to expand production across borders and anchor sustainable industrialization. Fifth, Africa must harness technology and data as economic infrastructure. Digital platforms, artificial intelligence, and data systems can improve tax administration, logistics management, trade, infrastructure maintenance, and industrial productivity. Investing in digital public infrastructure will strengthen state capacity and enable more competitive economies. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Africa possesses the assets, the resources, markets, and demographic momentum to achieve structural transformation. What we must now build is coordination. Finance that supports infrastructure, infrastructure that supports industry, and industry that supports trade. If we finance our infrastructure, integrate our markets, add value to our resources, and trade more with each other, Africa will not just participate in the global economy, it will help to shape it. And the Economic Commission for Africa is ever ready to support this agenda in close partnership with member states, the African Union, and the regional institutions.